Okay, this is a quick response to a recent extra credits video on the topic of evil races in game design. I'm going to talk a bit about the context for this issue, the implications for game design, and one particular argument that gets made in the video, one which I think is actually pretty disturbing. But first, some background. So for anyone who doesn't know, Wizards of the Coast recently made some changes to how a few of their fantasy races are depicted, because the negative traits traditionally assigned to them are, in their words, reminiscent of how real-world ethnic groups have been and continue to be denigrated. Now, a lot has already been said about this, but it seems to me that if you decide to change how fantasy races are depicted because you're worried about their association with race in real life, then you are just uncritically supporting the idea that real-world race distinctions are analogous to the distinction between orcs, elves, hobbits, and so on. And accepting this mistake leads you, with the best intentions, to make associations like this. I think if Wizards of the Coast and others want to fix this problem, they should address the source of the confusion and move away from the use of race as a term to describe what are actually different species. It would also then actually make sense to ascribe essential traits to groups like orcs, even fundamentally antagonistic ones, because, believe it or not, species actually do exhibit general behavioral traits that set them at odds with one another. To their credit, Extra Credits makes the right move by using the term sapient species, but as we've seen, they still commit the mistake that I've just described. But enough of all that, let's talk about the implications for game design. So the central claim of the video is this: depicting a fictional species as inherently bad is just poor game design. Part of the argument seems to be that these kinds of depictions close off more avenues for storytelling and player agency. Maybe, but it seems that a lot just depends on how you handle it. If, for example, I'm confronted with a species of orcs for whom bashing heads constitutes the highest good, I might be prompted to ask, is it really fair to judge these orcs by the same standards that I apply to humans? How much of what I consider good is just as dependent on the circumstances of my birth? How much do I actually get to choose my values? By acting on my own values, am I entitled to constrain or deprive these orcs of what counts as well-being for them, causing them suffering and unhappiness in the process? And how might we reimagine our own values if we were freed from the limitations of our birth, upbringing, or environment? Anyway, after some alternative proposals along the lines of, wouldn't it be cool if games gave you all the choices, like some kind of meet and greet morality simulator, Extra Credits addresses the obvious point that moral nuance is not really appropriate for games where you just need some bad guys to shoot. And this is where things get dark. As they argue, making an enemy group naturally evil is not sufficient for overcoming empathy, which would interfere with gameplay. So we need to put our targets in uniforms that signal they're bad by choice, not by birth. This removes the need or inclination towards moral debate and saves players from overthinking their moral choices. Note, it's not just that putting someone in a certain uniform can give us reasons to think them morally suspect or bad, but that certain uniforms remove the need for moral consideration completely, so we can just focus on the fun part, the killing. Now, I think that bringing up the concept of evil in the original video made things needlessly complicated. The term just brings too much conceptual baggage. But if there is anything that comes close to evil in the Extra Credits video, it's this: the suggestion that human people might be below moral concern because of what we believe their clothing says about them. If you have less moral concern about shooting a human because they're wearing a certain uniform than shooting a member of another species that is biologically oriented towards your destruction, then I'm just not sure what to say to you. Is it enough for me to simply point at this part of the argument for you to see how bad it is? Like, I don't have to explicitly state the moral hazard here, right? The Austin Powers movies did a whole gag based on how messed up this kind of thinking is. Am I misreading this line of argument? Am I the only one who has this moral intuition? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Until next time, go murder some orcs.